Alright, welcome back with another episode, and today we're going to be discussing divinations. So what are divination? It's the practice of seeking knowledge of the future or the unknown by supernatural means. It can be anything from the use of crystal balls, palm readings, tarot cards, mediums, psychics, fortune tellers, etc. And today we're going to discuss how is it possible people who practice divinations, basically seeing the future by supernatural means, how are they able to do this? Now, before I knew what I know now, I always wondered how there are a bunch of accounts of people going to psychics and mediums, and these psychics and mediums tell them their exact future of what's about to happen, and it ends up coming true. And I asked myself, would God allow them to have such a power to predict the future? Now that I have learned what I learned through personal experience of family members and myself, and other experiences that I've read about and people I've talked to, I now understand that mediums and psychics are not predicting anything. In fact, they are causing the future to happen. By people coming to them, asking them what their future is, what their fortune is, they open themselves up to these mediums, and in doing so opens them up to spiritual darkness that is going to affect their lives. So it's not necessarily that a psychic is predicting the future using tarot cards, but they're causing the future to happen. So if you come to a psychic and you have faith in what they're saying, you just open yourself up to dark spiritual powers. And they're not predicting your future when they tell you something such as, oh, something bad is going to happen to you this week. They are making the future happen because you just opened up yourself to dark spiritual powers. And today I want to talk about an experience that my dad had back in the 90s, where a psychic, a medium, a tarot card reader predicted my dad getting in a car accident. Before I do that, I'm going to read to you a Bible verse. This is Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 9 through 11. When thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God given thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you any one that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. Basically, the Bible is saying do not engage with these practices, do not go to mediums, do not go to psychics, tarot card readers, do not practice it yourself, do not get your fortunes from them, stay away from that territory. That territory is the spiritual kingdom of darkness. So back in the early 90s, my uncle had turned 18, and when you turn 18, in my dad's country, you leave straight to the army. So my dad already served his 1-2 years, and it was my uncle's turn to go into the army. And by tradition, whenever somebody leaves to the army, the family will throw a going away party and invite relatives and friends, and that's exactly what my dad's family did. They threw a going away party with food and drinks before my uncle left for the military the next day. So like I said, a bunch of relatives were invited. Some military friends of my dad were also invited to the going away party for my uncle. And one of the relatives that was invited to the going away party, I believe she was like my dad's aunt. I believe she was like a wife of an uncle of my dad's. And my dad's relative was a psychic. She was a medium. She was a tarot card reader. And my dad told me that at the time in the early 90s, he wasn't very close with God. And he said, back in the day, we didn't really have internet, and everything was kind of interesting to me, like the new age stuff, spirituality, psychics, and mediums. He said, I grew up around this stuff, and I seen it happen. Basically, at the party, my dad asks his relative if she can tell my dad something about his future. So my dad's relative takes out a deck of tarot cards, and I believe my dad said one of the cards she pulls out is called the Tower card. And it's a tarot card that's been used since the 15th century in practices of divinations. And the Tower card in the tarot deck symbolizes misery, distress, adversity, calamity, danger, disgrace, deception, ruin. It's a card in particular of unforeseen catastrophes. So basically, this card represents future dangers. So she pulls out this card and she tells my dad, she says, I see danger in your near future. And that day, she tells my dad, do not drive anywhere anytime soon. I believe she said today or tomorrow. She said, if you do, you're going to end up in a government building. And that can be a wide variety of things. It could be a courthouse. It could be a hospital. It can be a jail cell. And so my dad's mom hears this, and she takes the car keys and she hides them somewhere where nobody can find them. Because she hears what the psychic relative said, she takes the car keys and she hides it somewhere where my dad won't even think to look. So anyway, after that, the party continues. Everyone's drinking, having fun, eating. And since my dad is the older brother, he is in charge of showing hospitality to the guests. So people are having fun partying till 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and then most people start to fall asleep. All the relatives, the friends start to fall asleep. The only people who are awake are my dad's 2 military friends. And my dad at this time was super intoxicated. And my dad's military friends were stationed at a base that were just a couple miles away from their house. They were supposed to be there at 6 a.m. And at the time, I believe it was like 4 a.m. So they asked my dad for a favor. They said, hey, we don't really want to walk right now, and we have to be there at 6 a.m. We don't want to be late. Is it possible you can drive us to the military base? So again, my dad's intoxicated. He's not thinking too straight, but he's still aware of what he's doing. And he agrees and says, yeah, I'll give you guys a ride, because the military base is just a few miles away. So he's like, yeah, I got you guys. Like I said in the story, my dad's mom hides the car keys where nobody can find them because she heard what the medium said. And my dad said that when he walked into the house, it's like something was leading him to the keys. My dad told me that he had this weird sense that he knew exactly where the keys were, and he didn't even need to look for them. He didn't see my grandma hide them. My grandma hid them pretty good where nobody else can find them. So my dad did not spend any time looking for the keys, opening drawers. It's like he knew where they were right away without even looking for them. And my dad tells me at the time he believes that spirits were leading him to the keys, because he said it was almost like supernatural. I didn't need to look for the keys. I didn't even open any cabinets or look all around the house. I knew exactly where they were. So anyway, my dad finds the keys. He gets in the car, they start driving. His military friends get in the car, they start driving to the base to drop him off. And a couple of miles down the road, he gets into a very bad accident. He hits a pole, and he ends up in the hospital. Just like the psychic relative said when she laid out the tarot cards and she showed him the tower card. She said, there's danger in your future, don't drive anywhere, or you're going to end up in a government building. And he sure did. He ended up in a hospital because he got into a very bad crash. I was actually talking to my dad about this yesterday. We were on vacation. Me and my dad stayed up super late. Everybody else was sleeping. And we were just talking about his experiences back in the early 90s. And I asked him, I asked my dad, do you think she predicted your future or she caused it? And my dad says, I believe she caused it. And my dad was asking me questions like, how was a psychic able to predict exactly down to the detail what was going to happen to me? And I said, because you, out of curiosity, you asked the psychic to read you your future. My dad asked the psychic, can you tell me something about my future? And she did. And when you do that, there is an invisible spiritual transaction that happens. The Bible says that faith the size of a mustard seed can move mountains. And when you put even a little bit of faith into divinations, you open yourself up to dark spiritual forces. As believers, we are instructed not to mess with this kind of stuff, not to get in that territory. Don't mess with Ouija boards, tarot cards, psychic mediums, crystal balls, palm readings, like none of that stuff. Stay away from that stuff. And some people have this weird twisted view like, oh, as long as I believe in Jesus and I pray before messing with this stuff, it's okay. I'm going to pray before using a Ouija board. Like, no, that's not how that stuff works. God is not going to have your back when you become willfully ignorant. He tells you, don't mess with this stuff. Don't touch this. Don't mess with that. As a believer, you're supposed to be extra cautious than non-believers. You're supposed to understand that this is how the spiritual world works. And if you don't want to open up a can of worms, if you don't want to be involved in spiritual attacks, stay away from this stuff. This is often the whole point of my videos. I'm explaining to you guys what you need to stay away from. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you have any similar experiences. Thank you so much for watching and supporting this channel. Comment, like, share, subscribe, etc. And we are out.